You're listening to the Today's Conveyancer podcast, the leading source of information for residential property lawyers in England and Wales. Don't forget to subscribe and sign up to our free newsletter at todaysconveyancer.co.uk. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter.
Hello and welcome along to the latest Today's Conveyancer podcast. This week I'm joined by Mustafa Hassan. Mustafa is a consultant partner at Taylor Rose MW and is part of the growing number of conveyancers and other legal practitioners who have moved towards this consultant model of employment. And the subject of the podcast today is to talk a little bit about the consultant model, understand a bit more about some of the practicalities, and explore what perhaps a day in the life of a consultant solicitor looks like. But really appreciate you joining the podcast, Mustafa.
No, absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me, David.
Probably worth at the outset just telling us a little bit about who you are and your background as well, what you've sort of done previously.
Sure. So my current role as a consultant partner is in the residential conveyancing and commercial property departments. I qualified as a property lawyer, probably doing mainly commercial property and high net worth residential conveyancing, and from that it's just grown quite well whilst being at Taylor Rose as a consultant, and we'll go into a lot more detail on how that's grown, I think.
Well, what's your post-qualifying experience?
So I'm 8 years PQE. I joined Taylor Rose about 8 years ago, so I was very quite junior when I joined Taylor Rose, which was very unusual at the time.
So have you worked in-house before?
Previously, I was in a boutique firm in Knightsbridge. Got some very good training in residential commercial property law, and it really stood me in good stead to become a consultant.
So go back 8 years, which is an awful long time ago. When you consider that the consultancy model sort of was in its infancy at that point, what was it that really drew you to it at that point in your career?
There were various elements. One, being part of a growing firm, a very ambitious firm, was something that really attracted me to it. And then on the personal side, it was more, I wanted the flexibility and more responsibility of the work I was doing, the clients I was working with, and really to grow myself as a lawyer. I felt that was really important, something I really wanted to deal with.
So let's drill into some of the practicalities of a day in the life. How does being a consultant lawyer work when it comes to, for example, your professional indemnity insurance? Talk to us about how you're kind of covered and what level of cover that provides.
Sure. So part of the consultancy arrangement that I have with Taylor Rose, consultants are covered within the indemnity provided by Taylor Rose. So they very much have their policy in place, and we're covered through that on the work we do via Taylor Rose. So very much, it's not something we need to look into ourselves. It's very much covered by Taylor Rose.
And does that include things like cyber security insurance? I was at a conference last week where cyber security is a real challenge, particularly for conveyancers.
Yeah, so it's an all-encompassing indemnity policy, I guess, in terms of our perspective as consultant. Very much the compliance side, whether it's cyber security or professional indemnity on the work we're doing, very much covered by the firm. So as a consultant, a lot of our concerns are eased in that sense, where we're here to do a job in terms of the legal work we do, and a lot of the compliance is covered by Taylor Rose.
And then how does it work, for example, from a marketing and brand point of view? You talked about the fact that you had your practice in Knightsbridge and that stood you in good stead, but how much involvement do you have in your own marketing activity and winning new business and new clients?
So I think it's changed quite a lot over the years. Certainly when I joined, there was a big focus on consultants bringing their own work. and doing a lot of their own networking, marketing, business development, which is very much something I did when I joined Taylor Rose. Again, just going off the back of, I really wanted to be in control of the level of work and the clients I wanted to work with. It's grown significantly over the years, where Taylor Rose has put a lot of effort, a lot of focus on business development and marketing. We now have quite a large department which solely focuses on the marketing side and branding. As a consultant now, we can dip into that work which comes in. So we'll have consultants join now that maybe don't quite have the following that a consultant who's been, like myself, for 8 years. I've got my own following. They can dip into the Taylor Rose back office and work off a lot of the instructions that Taylor Rose benefits from.
And we'll come on to fees shortly, but presumably there's additional fees for dipping in and out of the marketing activity?
I believe so. Again, it's not something I personally look to deal with, just because of what I've wanted to do and have built over the number of years. But there is scope to get work.
And what about technology? So, one of the benefits of working for a big firm, I suspect, is that you have access to the technology.
That's right. So again, as part of our consultancy arrangement, we have full use of the Taylor Rose systems, whether it's IT benefits, accounting, a whole wide range of practical law and LexisNexis systems and websites, which a lot of lawyers would benefit from by being part of a large firm. I think with the smaller firms, you may not get that, but Taylor Rose are more than accommodating in that respect. So in terms of a day-to-day working as a consultant, I've got everything I need from Taylor Rose to allow me to do my job effectively.
It's almost like a franchise. Is that a fair sort of description, or am I wide of the mark?
No, it could be seen as that. I mean, we work, whilst we are consultants, we are independent in that respect. We are very much working under the Taylor Rose brand. If you're a client looking at it, you probably wouldn't know any difference. It's very much on the back office side of what the arrangements are, whether you're an employee or a consultant. But the work we deliver just has to meet Taylor Rose's requirements, service levels. That will never change.
You preempted my next question actually there, Mustafa. So you're tied to delivering a service at an agreed service level agreement of some description with Taylor Rose? In essence,
I think in any firm you go to, the minimum that is required of any lawyer, whether they're a consultant or employee, is a very high level of quality. Clients need to be happy. We need to be doing what we're doing on the legal side, but as well as compliance. I think that will always be in place, and quite rightly so. So
we talk a little bit about your clients then. You suggested, obviously, you've built up your following, you brought some clients with you. Who, in inverted commas, owns the client and the client relationship?
So very much the clients I bring in are my own. If I was to leave Taylor Rose, the agreement is very much those clients will follow me as clients I've brought in. Of course, if I'm working on files or clients of the firm, they will remain with Taylor Rose, which I think is a very fair arrangement.
And in terms of, let's say, feedback, for example, how is that monitored and measured? Is that something that you can implement yourself, or again, is that something that is kind of firm wide?
So it is monitored. It all forms part of sort of the audit and monitoring that we go through as a firm. Again, level of service is paramount. It's for benefits the firm, benefits the consultants. So we're regularly audited in terms of our day-to-day files. Obviously, we're looking at increasing our positive feedback and internet awareness and exposure. I think that ties also in with the reputation, not just of the firm, but for the consultants as well. We're very much looking at enhancing as much positive feedback as possible, and that can come directly to us.
And then when it comes to charging, which is an increasingly challenging point for conveyancers. Are you free to set your own fee levels? Again, do you have to kind of fall in line with a preset level of fees that Taylor Rose dictate?
Within reason, we are free to charge what we want. I think when you're looking to get a quality service out there, there are parameters where I think any conveyancer, any lawyer would look to bill. And so whilst I've never been said I must bill within this figure and that figure, there's a sort of unwritten rule or general fees which we're looking to charge per file.
And are those fees then linked to your remuneration effectively?
Yes, so the remuneration for consultants is on a percentage basis. So, if we bill X, we will take Y. I guess everybody wants to earn a reasonable amount, depending on the effort they're putting in. I think that's where the consultancy program really works, where if people really want to maximize their earnings, and if that's reflected in the quality of work, it's just a really clear, transparent way of earning.
You selected to be a consultant, as you say, because you wanted more control over your sort of work-life balance. Is that how it's worked for you? Do you sort of find that you've got some more work-life balance that you might otherwise have?
Within reason, I think as a consultant, we are free to set our working day, really. You find a lot of consultants will balance their working day or working week accordingly, whether that's in terms of personal requirements, children, families, etc., or even in terms of holidays. I think most consultants are actually taking more holidays than they did as an employee, just because they can. They're more at ease, and it's a bit easier to manage their day-to-day workload if they know they're going to be away for a period of time. It's very easy to wind down your workload if you want to do that, or continue it and work with the other consultants to arrange cover. So it's very much what you make of it as an individual consultant. I guess some consultants choose to work more and take less holiday. Others are a bit more controlled onto the level of instructions they take. So it's a very much an independent consultant by consultant basis how they structure their working week.
And it sounds as though there's a community. You just said there about the fact that perhaps you could bring in another consultant to support if, for example, you were going on holiday. Is that fair?
Very much so. You'll find a lot of consultants willing to help each other, on the understanding that if they're going to be away, the chance of them getting work done is minimal. So there is very much a community feel, where if I'm off, I know there's 2 or 3 other consultants who will step in to cover me, and vice versa. I will cover them. It is a very easy, again, transparent way of working.
I guess ultimately, though, you're a business owner, so you get out of this what you put in. You still have to submit your taxes at the end of the year. You still have to work as hard as you might if it were your own business, or it is in effect your own business.
Yeah, that's correct. I think you do see, I've seen it personally, when individuals will make the transition from employee to consultant. I think where there's that bit of fear that you haven't got the regular salary to fall back on, you're in control. You will know how much earnings you will get for the current workload you have within reason. It is managing your own business, managing your finances. Very much the first few months of a consultant joining, that's probably the more difficult period, on the basis that most people don't have a full working caseload to bring with them. Like you said, it is a business. It's managing what you've got, your instruction levels, and it's something that is, I think, continuously on the consultants' minds. Where is their work coming from? How regular is the work? Do they need to take on extra staff to assist them? It is very much an independent business that we take.
So as part of your role as a consultant, you can actually bring on staff into what is in effect your own business?
That is correct. I've myself taken that route, just where Fortunately, instruction levels were quite strong early on in my consultancy, to a point where I needed some assistance in various forms, whether it's as a legal assistant or other solicitors, fee earners, and it's grown over the 8 years that I've been here.
And are they employed by you, or then sort of as part of the consultant program by Taylor Rose?
It's very much a contractual relationship between myself and what I call sub-consultants that work with me. So there's no direct legal relationship between my sub-consultants and Taylor Rose. They fall under my consultancy. So their financial package is dependent on me and what agreement we have. It has been employees. Sometimes, again, it's on a consultancy basis. It depends what works for each individual, really.
And then how does that impact you in terms of some of the employment regulations that sit around that? Do you have to provide like a pension scheme? Do you have to provide insurance cover and all that kind of stuff?
That's correct. If I was to take on employees, as I have done in the past, very much the laws and financial structure around an employer would kick in. Workplace pension, employers' liability insurance, they would kick in.
So it could potentially become sort of quite complicated and convoluted if you're a consultant with Taylor Rose, but then have this sort of almost separate company that springs out from that.
I wouldn't say it was too complicated, to be honest. It's something, as I said before, I think on an individual basis, if that's what the consultant wants to do and the model that they're working towards, again, it's just something which happens quite often, I think. It depends on the individual consultant, really.
And presumably you'd be responsible for things like file auditing and all that kind of business of your employees.
Correct. As the lead consultant, is very much my responsibility, who works on the files under my supervision.
It's really interesting, and we could probably talk about some of the ins and outs of this for most of the rest of the day, but I'm quite interested. You talked about the flexibility that it provides as a consultant. What does a typical day in the life of a consultant look like, or is there no typical day?
If you want to go off the majority of consultants, it would be very much similar to what an employee has day to day. You're running your files. A consultant, I think, has a bit more flexibility in terms of time management. So you'll find a lot of consultants may log on early in the morning, do what they need to, and they may have breaks in the day, maybe finish a little bit earlier, but then log on later at night in the evening to catch up on emails, any drafting that needs to be done. Whereas I think the difference with an employee is very much more focused on time limits. So obviously you have your start time, your finishing time, whatever's in your contract as an employee. But really the day-to-day is very similar. We are lawyers. We're here to run files, work with clients. We understand that the general working hours in any profession is set, and the consultants will very much work around that to keep the clients happy and ensure that what they need to be done does get done.
I mean, it's a fascinating subject, and I think you've given us a real insight into it.
The structure of a consultant is, as I said, very transparent. The minimum that is expected is to deliver quality service to your clients. I think being a consultant gives the individual a bit more room to deliver that in a little bit more of a different way, whereas you're not limited to the rigid structure of a 9 to 5, let's say. My personal feeling is when an individual has got a bit more flexibility, motivation goes up, productivity goes up, and quality goes up. I've certainly seen that, not just for myself, but many other consultants that we work with. Given what's happened in society in the last few years, I think very much the traditional working in an office 9 to 5, you don't really see that too often, I don't think, anymore. And I think the consultancy model just fits in really well with that. To give people the choice of how they want to work, I think is very important. And I think it is very innovative. And I think it's going to be a lot more, not just in law, but I think various other professions, it's going to be a lot more familiar in the years to come.
Well, here's a question for you then. given that employers have got to be more flexible in the new normal, does that mean that the consultancy model is no longer as relevant because you're going to get that flexibility in an employed role?
No, I wouldn't agree with that entirely. I still think there is far more flexibility with consultancy on the basis that we are self-employed. And I just think the comparison from that to a flexible employee role, they will get closer together, I think, but still very much more flexible as a consultant than an employee.
I sense I'm talking to the converted if I ask that question. You obviously find it hugely beneficial to be in the position that you're in, and to have done it for 8 years is a real credit to you. Do you see that, given the experience that you've had, you could either go on and set up your own firm, or do you see that actually it gives you an opportunity to go into a firm at a higher level in an employed role at some point in the future?
I think from my personal experience, it's gone far better and far more successful than I had anticipated at the start. I think a lot of that is just from progression as you grow, not just as a lawyer, but personally. It's something I've really enjoyed, as well as something it's gone well. Coming back to your question, do I feel I'd want to set up my own law firm? Honestly, no. I think a lot of the compliance that comes in nowadays is very time consuming. And I think if I was to take that route, it would detract from what I'm perhaps better at, rather than focusing my energy on compliance side of things. And in terms of going back into employment in a high level, again, I think across the board, it's something some individuals may wish to do that. I personally, at this point in time, probably wouldn't do that. Again, it just comes on to the fact that I'm very happy in what I'm doing. I've got the flexibility to make a few changes and how I and my team like to work. I've had plenty of approaches to go back into an employed position at higher levels. Again, it's just not something I'd like to explore. I'm very happy in what I'm doing. Hopefully long may it continue.
I just wanted to say thank you very much indeed for joining the podcast. It's been really interesting to drill into this whole consultancy model, because we're seeing it increase in prevalence in conveyancing. Firms like Taylor Rose, Setfords, and a number of others are also looking to adopt this model as well, which is really interesting. Mustafa, really great to chat. Thank you so much for your time.
No problem at all. It's been great. Thank you.
The Today's Conveyancer podcast is available on your preferred podcast provider. It's also available on the Today's Conveyancer website. Thank you very much indeed for listening in, and we'll be back again soon.
You're listening to the Today's Conveyancer podcast, the leading source of information for residential property lawyers in England and Wales. Don't forget to subscribe and sign up to our free newsletter at todaysconveyancer.co.uk. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter.